taking Jeff's presentation spot just because I have a flight out to San Francisco. So if you want to listen to Jeff, he's going to be speaking later on around 4:15. So today we're going to talk about the impact of blockchain on government and societies. And we're going to wait for the presentation to come on. How's everyone doing, by the way? I think we can do much better than that. How's everyone doing? And I already lost my voice. That's much better. Awesome. It's been a long week here, Consensus. How many of you are from New York City, by the way? All right, a few folks. Guess everybody's from out of town. That's good. All right. So I can actually tell a little bit more about me. Christian Ferri, I'm the president and CEO of Blockstar. We're an advisory and investment firm out of San Francisco. Had the opportunity and the pleasure to work with some governments in the United States and in Europe. So a lot of the things you'll see here are byproduct of some of the experiences that we had working with these entities. Moving on, we talked about this already. So as of March 2017, there were about 38 plus implementations, DLT implementation, in governments around the world. Thinking what about to point this thing? Oh, there you go. So we kind of see how it's spread out. We see that mainly like United States and Europe are leading the pack here. And these sort of implementations cut through a broad spectrum of focus areas, right? We have identity management, we have voting, we have asset registrations, we have entitlement management. I guess it's going by itself. We gotta figure out how this thing works. All right, so we have a lot of use cases here, right? Supply chain, trackability, and so forth. But I personally think there's gonna be three major areas of disruptions in the public sector. These are gonna be identity management, asset registration, and voting. And we'll delve into more in details to understand why these are almost like the low-hanging fruit when it comes to the public sector. Identity management, why this is a good candidate? Well, it's very inefficient, right? There's a lack of standards in terms of the process is not well defined. Every entity within governments, on average, manage a separate identity, right? So basically the identity are not interoperable with themselves. We basically have multiple identities for the same individual. The attestation process, that means how do you actually attest that somebody is he or she claimed to be, it's not defined. Better defined in developed countries, not well defined at all in developing countries. There's lack of scalability. We have thousands of immigrants immigrating into a country. And you can imagine the challenge that most governments have when it comes to IDing 1,000 people in a day or two, right? It's a scalability issue. And obviously identity theft. We've seen a lot of it, in the news recently, or the credit score agencies that got hacked, a lot of identity were stolen. We saw Target, credit cards, so that's why DLT can come to the rescue. It can create a secure, unhackable, self-sovereign identity. They can actually be used across the services, right? So you don't have redundancies, right? You can use one identity for all the services within the government, but also across governments, right? So think about you're flying from Paris in France to, Hawaii. Something happened, you lose your passport, your identity gets stolen. With a DLT, you basically, the two governments can talk to each other and it's the same identity, right? So you don't necessarily have to verify yourself through a passport, which is a piece of paper, and we are in 2018, right? So you understand how archaic some of our tech today is, with going around with a piece of paper that you can lose in a second. So And the last thing I think that's the most interesting to me is how identity is going to be owned by the citizen, just like is happening in healthcare. There's a big movement right now. I'm on the board of two companies. They're developing wallets to give patients their right to own their own healthcare data. Similarly is happening in the government space, where the idea is to give citizens the rights to their own identity, and then through a permission-based blockchain, to allow them to decide who they want to give that identity to and what piece of that identity they want to give it to. They don't have to give the full story, but they can give first name and last name, no social, no address. You understand what I'm going with this, right? And so we've seen this is happening already in some pilots around the world, and it's also happening with companies, right? Not necessarily I want to give all my information to Facebook, right? So now the big talk with Facebook is creating a user identity wallet that they can decide who they're going to give the data to, when, and also how much they want to monetize on. Asset registration, and I'm running just because we only have 8 minutes, so I apologize. If you have more questions, you can grab me after this. Pain point, obviously it's inaccurate, efficient, expensive. An entire industry was created based on the inefficiencies of asset registration. It's the title insurance company. In 2014 and 15, Americans spent over $1 billion in title insurance because the system is broken. And so instead of fixing the problem, we're putting a Band-Aid and just say, buy insurance, because we know that the system down the road, you might buy a property for $1 million and down the road, your name is not going to be on it. So a lot of people end up paying money to buy this insurance, which doesn't make sense. And it's also vulnerable to attack because it's pretty centralized when it's digitized, because most of it is on paper. And then it's vulnerable, obviously, to cyber attacks, right? Which means forging of track records. So DLT can do a lot of the remediations there, reduce the number of intermediaries, think about notaries, think about title companies, insurance company, a lot more efficient, a lot less expensive. Increase trust between the parties, increase efficiency, and obviously reduce the chances of forging. So you go buy a beautiful house in Venice Beach, and you know that your house is going to be yours, right? It's not going to have somebody else's name on the title at some point. Sweden has been in the forefront of that. 2006 with this project called Lantmäteriet. If I sound Swedish in the room, I apologize because I definitely butchered the name, so sorry about that. But they did that in 2016. Basically, there was the first transaction on the blockchain for the sale of a real estate asset. It went smoothly. It was a great success to the point that Sweden decided to implement this on as an optional way to transact real estate assets. And lastly, voting. Expensive. The ballots are very expensive to print. The voting machines are expensive to maintain. Obviously vulnerable to cyber attacks. Lack of transparency. Lack of transparency, if I go vote and I say, am I really sure that my vote is going to get counted? I can tell you that that's a major factor. There's some studies around that. It's a major factor around people not going to vote. In the United States, unfortunately, 50%, almost 50% of people don't go vote. So that's where DLT comes in from an efficiency standpoint, not just from reducing the cost and improving the efficiency of the voting process, but also to increasing the trust, allowing people to see what's inside the black box and gain that transparency that we don't have today. Ukraine has been at the forefront with Evox, a voting process. They piloted a few years ago. They implemented recently. Moscow has been active. Denmark as well. And lastly, society. Society is going to get impacted in two major ways: trust and efficiency. Trust, human beings. DLT is going to weed out bad actors. Why? Because if everything that you do and you say is going to be tracked and recorded forever and is going to be mutable, you're going to think twice about say something or do something that you're not proud of. That's why my prediction is going to be that reputation is going to be the single most important asset that a human being will own. And governments are going to have transparency to see what the other governments are doing. That will increase will reduce the bad assumptions and increase basically the good relationship between governments, hopefully. So that's a big, huge point to reduce wars and all those kind of things. and efficiency, resource allocations, we'll be able to track, monitor, and see around the world when there's more resources and allocated in place with a scarcity of resources. Think about food, water, drugs, and faster interactions. As two new people get to transact and interact or talk, they don't know each other, there's no trust. So that interaction takes longer, because that's what I call the trust runway. With DLT, there's no need for trust, no need to wait. You just transact and that's it. DLT takes care of it. So a lot of interactions are going to be much more efficient and less expensive. And here are a million more use cases for society. Air pollution, water can go a lot more, right? So we don't have the time for that. Ask me, I'll send you the deck if you need to. And I'll leave the last slide here. Can blockchain be the one? And I'll say the one because we know that DLT is here to stay. We're going to think about life before blockchain just the way we think about life before the internet. It's a paradigm shift. It changed the way we think about money, Satoshi in 2009. We think about governments. We think about society. We think about friends and family, partners, even ourselves. So my question to you is, can blockchain be the one to help answer the two most important questions in human history? And these are, who are we? And what do we do here? Thanks, everyone. It's been a pleasure. Thanks, Kurt and the team for putting together this great event, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.